My name is Sam Otten, and with me is Jason Book. And in this video, we're going to be talking about the forthcoming movie from Warner Brothers, DC Films, The Suicide Squad, which is going to be released on August 5th. We're both pretty excited for the movie. We're both fans of DC Films in general. So this will be the third installment of the DC Films Justice League universe. And we now know from Entertainment Weekly that Suicide Squad does take place after BVS, if some people were trying to wonder if it's like a prequel story or where it fits in. What we want to do, though, is talk not about the story or not about the marketing of the movie. We want to speculate on what we think it might be able to do at the box office, and we'll make some predictions here of where we think it might open and where it might go box office-wise, so in terms of its success with the general audiences. So, Jason, first of all, what's your excitement level for the movie, and then what are your initial thoughts on like where this thing might be headed box office-wise?
Well, I think there's a lot like kind of hinging on this film because, Batman vs. Superman was pretty divisive for a lot of people and it didn't do, as crazy well as they thought they would. They've definitely kind of reassessed things and I think they're going a little bit lighter in tone for the next movie for Justice League. So I think this one, being a villain movie, it can come at it from a different perspective anyways, but it's got a lot riding on it. It's got a big cast. There's some big names in it. And they're riding on the success of this, like with a lot of lesser known comic book characters, except for maybe the Joker and Harley Quinn, right? So It's got a lot of potential, but it's got a lot of weight on its shoulders to do well. I think it's got potential to do really well though, because I think it's coming at it from a different perspective, coming at it like Dirty Dozen kind of movie, or like a Reservoir Dogs type movie or something where it's a bunch of bad guys thrown together. So that aspect of it has me really excited. I'm interested to see the Batman cameo and obviously the Joker as well, because I still have real high bar set from Heath Ledger and Jack Nicholson as well. So I'm looking to see what Leto does with the role, and I'm looking forward to it. I think I'm going to have fun with it. And some of the trailers look pretty serious, and some look like they're kind of having fun with it. So I think it's got the potential to be something different.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Dirty Dozen because David Ayer had specifically mentioned Dirty Dozen as like one of the movies that's giving him inspiration for this because it's a similar type of premise.
Cool.
But now you got villains instead of like military convicts or whatever.
Yeah.
But you're right that the pressure has kind of increased on this one. And in the Entertainment Weekly issue that's coming out right this week, David Ayer did say that like when it started, it was just this idea that he pitched to Warner Brothers, and it was like a sort of secondary comic book that not a lot of people knew about, and maybe the Joker would be like the draw that the general audiences knew about. But then David Ayer says like now over the last 2 years, it's all of a sudden risen up to be like this very anticipated movie, really hot on social media. It's been in the top 10 in social media for the whole year. They do like social media tracking on movies every week. And it's like one of it and Age of Ultron are like the only movies that during their years were in the top 10 for like the whole year.
Interesting.
So it has buzz going for it. So now there's this pressure on it. You mentioned BVS, being divisive. So I think Warner Brothers, BVS is still financially successful and it's still moving things forward. But if Warner Brothers and DC Films could have a movie that just everybody was happy about and there wasn't the controversy or the heated debate, I think Warner Brothers would just breathe a little bit easier. So this would be the kind of movie where they would hope to get that from it. So I think you're right about that. In terms of the success, I mean, I think that there's a lot of things pointing to its success. So I mentioned the social media. That's becoming a good indicator of how much talk there is about the movie, how many people are aware of the movie, and it can really lead to people actually buying tickets and going to the movie. So that's a good indicator. It has the Joker and Harley Quinn, like you mentioned. And Heath Ledger's performance of the Joker was great, won the Oscar, praised by lots of people. I think that might work in the favor here because people might just want to be a part of the conversation to see this new take on the Joker.
Right.
So there might be people that love this new take. There might be people that still prefer the Heath Ledger take on it. But it might be one of those cultural things where everybody wants to at least check it out so that they can form their own opinion. And if they do that, that's ticket sales, right?
Yeah, that makes sense, yeah.
And then you mentioned Batman's cameo. So if you've got Joker, Harley Quinn, and Batman in the movie, that gives you some heavyweights. But then you have a potential for these breakout stars, like a breakout character, right? So maybe it's like people, I never heard of Boomerang before, or I never heard of, Killer Croc. But man, they were cool, or I really liked that character, or I really liked the performance. So it
Yeah.
has that potential for a breakout character that can be, word of mouth, and there can be this buzz.
I totally agree with that. Yeah, it's got a lot of potential, so I'm really looking to see what happens with it.
Yeah, and David Ayer, I like a lot of his movies. He had Fury, and he's had movies that are with teams, so I think he's well set up for this one.
Yeah.
He's never had like the huge tent pole, like he's never had the movie that's going for 700 million, 800 million, that kind of thing. But I think he's made quality movies. I think he knows how to really bring personality into the movies.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's, I think, going to be something that can work well here. So let's talk some numbers, though. So it's being released in August, and August is, kind of after the peak summer season. And so August records, the record holder for highest opening weekend domestic is Guardians of the Galaxy with like around 94 million. And that was actually a pretty big surprise at the time because in the past, August usually has movies that top out around 50 or 60 or 65 million. That's like what the number 2, number 3, number 4 highest grossing openings are. But Guardians of the Galaxy came in with a 94 million.
Wow.
Now, pro.boxoffice.com, they do forecasts for the opening weekends, and they have Suicide Squad predicted at 98 million. So they're actually predicting a record-setting August opening. What do you think about that? Does that seem ambitious, or do you think it actually could hit that mark if it has good reception?
I think it might, but it really depends on word of mouth too, because Guardians of the Galaxy did well. The reason it did because of word of mouth. I remember people saying it was really good, and people that would not normally go see a comic book movie maybe checked it out, or people that liked sci-fi movies but didn't like comic book movies went to check it out. So it really had that going for it. So Suicide Squad can capitalize on that, and it ends up getting some nice friendly reviews plus some good word of mouth from fans. That's going to be the kind of success that it needs to break those records or to even hit the same mark. I would say.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you. So like, I think that the indicators are that Suicide Squad is going to be successful.
Yeah.
But if it has this good word of mouth that you're talking about, then I think it can actually like overachieve. I think if the buzz and the reception is positive, I think it's going to hit the 98 million. I would actually say it probably hits 100 million for opening weekend, which is very good for an August opening. And for
exactly, right?
Comic book movie that's from, until now, not a very well-known property.
Well, because look at something like Deadpool. That movie did really well with a character that's not super well known because, of good reviews and word of mouth and people talking about it. And it also pushed the envelope a little bit too. So Suicide Squad is not going to go that far, but it has the potential to do something similar, which is take characters that not a lot of people know and kind of bring them to the forefront.
Yeah, and it could be this kind of like mix of good action, good personalities, and like characters where you just kind of get to know them and you enjoy hanging out with them.
Right.
And having, it has some dark humor, I think, fit in there as well. So
Yeah,
it
totally.
could have that mix that seems to be working in this day and age.
Yeah, that seems like the tone it has going for it will work well for it. And I mean, I did hear something about reshoots and things like that, but I think that I read that they weren't necessarily about changing tone or anything. It was just adding a few scenes here and there.
Yeah, and actually, so David Ayer, like, he responded to those rumors, and he said Warner Brothers was really happy with the movie, and so they said, do you want to do anything else? We're going to give you another 10 or 15 million dollars to go shoot some more. And so David Ayer said, like, well, yeah, I would add these little flourishes to some of the action scenes.
Right.
So David Ayer said it was basically Warner Brothers was gaining confidence, and so they were willing to put more money into it. If Warner Brothers was like worried, they would basically cut their losses and try to say like, okay, let's minimize the amount that we're going to spend on it because it's not going to do that well.
Yeah, totally.
So yeah, I'm not really worried about those reshoots at all. And some people kind of took the wrong story from it. But the other thing that I always look at with this box office stuff is like, what's it going up against? So like, what's the kind of climate going to be like at the movies for that week and the following week and stuff. So now if we're thinking about like what's its run going to be like after opening weekend, if its target is like $100 million opening weekend, after it, there's really no direct competition for the whole rest of August. The other movies that are coming later in August are totally different genres.
Right.
So it has the chance to like be the number one movie for like 3 or maybe even 4 weeks. And then the movies that are still going to be around from before are Jason Bourne and Star Trek Beyond. So like those will still be in theaters, but Suicide Squad will come in as kind of the last big movie for the summer. So
Yeah.
what do you think? Like, do you think it might have some legs because of the lack of competition, or do you think it'll still just really depend on the word of mouth and stuff?
It depends how it starts to me. I mean, like people that are going to see Star Trek and Jason Bourne are actually some of the same fans. So
Right.
they it might do well that it's coming on the heels of those movies because if there's nothing else really grabbing people around that time, then why not go see this? You also have the people that go see anything that Will Smith's in. So you know it's
That's
got
true.
that potential too. And Margot Robbie's, developing a bit of following too. I would say she's been
Right.
pretty good at most movies she's been in. So we'll see. So it depends where it's situated. To me, is advantageous for it to do well. I think.
Yeah, I think so too. Like, I think if Jason Bourne and Star Trek Beyond, especially if those are not like runaway hits, which I kind of think those two are going to underperform compared to like their predecessors.
Yeah, they could just
If
be sleeper. Kind of do okay.
Yeah, which then to me would seem like Suicide Squad is set up to be like the big finish to the summer. Like it's going to be the one that's going to surpass and become the last big summer hit. So can I get you to go on record with any kind of a prediction? Like, do you think it's going to, clear Guardians of the Galaxy's numbers or not quite rise to that level? Or do you have
I
a
would
range that you
say
want to put it in?
if I had to guess, I'll say it'll get close to it, but I don't know if it's going to surpass it because I think Guardians of the Galaxy was a surprise hit for Marvel, and it did much better than they thought it would do. Whereas I think
Right.
Suicide Squad has a little bit more expectation on it.
That's true.
And the climate of going to the movies right now is really volatile. Like as a person going to pay to see it, some movies do well. Some movies that they expect to do well are really doing crappy. So it depends how many people go out to see it that opening weekend, and then the word of mouth for the second and third weekend. So it really depends on that.
Yeah. I agree with what you're saying. I'm going to try to put some numbers to that. So, like, at the very beginning of the year, I went on the record making predictions for all the comic book movies, and for Suicide
Yeah.
Squad, I said 700 million. I actually still think that's a pretty good estimate. So
Okay.
I'm going to say, like, that my 60% confidence interval, like, I think it's 60% likely that it will fall between 700 million and 800 million worldwide.
Okay.
Which is going to put it right into competition with Guardians of the Galaxy type stuff, which would
Yeah.
be a very big success, I would say.
I would agree. Yeah.
I think that even worst case scenario, like if it has bad reviews or if the word of mouth is not great, I still think there's enough going for this movie that it'll still going to clear 500 million.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I really don't think there's a risk of it bombing, which a bomb I would say is something like lower than 500 million. But I think it's going to
Yeah.
be above 500 million. And then I think there's actually a chance that it would go beyond 800 million if it really is firing on all cylinders, and if comic book fans who like analyzing the movies and like the whole universe, if they love it, but if also the general audience can tap into it and enjoy it just as a standalone movie,
Right.
in that case, I think it could actually make a run at like 900 million or beyond, which means it would actually surpass Batman v Superman, which would be kind of surprising.
I would
But
agree. Yeah.
I think Suicide Squad has the chance of being more like an audience-friendly movie, more so than Batman v Superman, which was very like heavy and serious and kind of deep. Suicide Squad, I think, will be good, but it might be more accessible.
Yeah, I would agree with what you're saying too. It really just depends how it comes out of the gate to me, and if people like the fact that all these different characters in there's not too much going on in the film, and really, it's how they gel in the movie too. Like if they're not, even though they're bad guys, they're not likable, or you don't like watching them on screen together, then that's kind of the whole movie, right?
Yeah, right. Or if Joker just doesn't quite work. Because I
Yeah.
think if Joker works, I think you're going to have a lot of people that want to see it just because they want to check out Joker. Like, they want to
Totally.
see what's going on.
Yeah,
So,
and even if you just get one classic confrontation between Batman and the Joker, will be pretty cool.
yeah, or Joker and Harley. Like, if Joker and Harley have really good dynamics.
Yeah, that chemistry is huge. I mean, like, as far as the different incarnations of the comic have gone, they weren't always in it, but they're going that route, so they might as well capitalize on it, right?
Yeah. All right, cool. So my specific number, to get really specific, I'll say 724 million. That's what I'll say worldwide.
Sounds good. I'm holding you to it.